Hi, I'm Keionna Thomas, Program Coordinator for BRAIDEd with the EcoWomanist Institute Southeast, and this is BRAIDEd. Welcome back to BRAIDEd from the EcoWomanist Institute Southeast. I'm your host, Keionna Thomas, Program Coordinator for BRAIDEd. I have to be honest, it's been a minute, and if you've been following along since we launched on Earth Day 2025, first of all, thank you. The response to this podcast has meant more than I can say, and I want to start today by bringing you up to speed on where we've been, and more importantly, where we're going. Since you last heard from us, we've officially onboarded 10 incredible Black women land stewards into the BRAIDEd program, each of whom bring unique expertise and experiences to this collective learning experience. We will be kicking off with the entire cohort in person for a weekend of learning, collaboration, and growing. As this is only the first of many, we're so excited to welcome each of the women in to kick off this remarkable journey. So much is in motion, and that brings me to today, because the work of this program isn't just about land. It's about the people on the land, their stories, their wisdom, their well-being. And today's conversation is a perfect example of that.
I put on the uniform and found myself. I served my country and fell in love with me. Travel the world being all I could be. God showed me here is where I'd be. Always on time. Always on time. Always on time.
What you just heard is an anthem, and I don't use that word lightly. That's Dr. Connie Baptiste. And yes, she can sing, but her music isn't exactly why we invited her on the program today. Dr. Connie is a fifth-generation farmer, a retired military veteran, a mental wellness advocate, a Georgia agricultural mental health hero, and pivotal contributor to the BRAIDEd cohort. She is, in every sense, a woman who moves between worlds that most people never think to connect. As BRAIDEd launches and begins doing the real work of building this program with farmers on the ground, the team made a deliberate decision. Before we talk about land, before we talk about policy, before anything else, we're prioritizing mental wellness first. Because a healthy farmer is the foundation of everything, and no one understands that better than Dr. Connie. I had the pleasure of sitting down with her, and I want you to hear her in her own words. Enjoy. Dr. Connie, thank you so much for joining us today and for being a part of what we're building with BRAIDEd. You're a fifth-generation farmer, but you're also the first person in your family to actually own the land you farm. That's a significant milestone. What did it mean to you to take that step, and what did it feel like to finally hold that title?
Heavy. I didn't think about it when I was looking for the land. I just knew that there was something inside that kept saying, go home. And I thought home literally meant moving back to the country where my family was from. And then I realized that I was being pointed in a different direction, close, but not in the same space. And once I stepped on the land that I own now, I knew. It was as if I was connected to it. And my grandfather and my great-grandfather had farmed forever. And being sharecroppers, it was a hard life. And I remember my grandparents moving because one sharecropper didn't have enough work for them and they had to go find another. So it was a very brutal time, but it was the way of life. So now when my family talks about it, I can see their pride and I can hear the younger generation realizing that they don't have to settle and no dream is impossible.
Prior to you getting on that land, you spent time in the military, you worked in culinary arts, and now you're farming. Each of those spaces has historically been shaped by exclusion, whether it's race, gender, or even both. What's the common thread you found in navigating spaces that weren't built with you in mind?
A long time ago, I heard a pastor say, when God gives you a purpose, that you can walk in the room with someone else and they not be bothered by what they see. It had always bothered me, the exclusion, but it never dawned on me that it was a place that I couldn't go. I'm Air Force. So that means that African Americans are 1% of the military Air Force population, and African American women is an even smaller spot. It means that you have to know who you are and what you bring to the table to be able to stand in those spaces, because it can be brutal. If you are thin-skinned, it will tear you down. But if you know that you are the change, you manage it.
You've talked about a strong connection between military service and farming, the discipline, the mission orientation, and the relationship to land. About 20% of farmers have military experience. What do you think draws veterans to agriculture? And what does that overlap tell us about both worlds?
It takes a dreamer to be in agriculture, and it takes a dreamer to be in the military. And both professions you are born in. There are other people that the military is not their way of life. It has always been for me. And I always tease my friends that we were born to be military. And I realized that I was also born to be a farmer. One, the dreaming part of it, because military members are military members, and we go to war and we wear the uniform because we believe in what America can be, not what it is, because for African Americans in uniform, it is not always kind. And for women, sometimes it's even more brutal. But we go again because of what we know in our heart we want America to be. For farmers, they've always been dreamers. Who else would plant a seed and wait for the harvest? You have to understand that what you're doing is not just for you, and that there's something out there bigger, and there's something even more beautiful at the end of the harvest. So it's the discipline, it's the dreaming, it is the resilience, it is knowing that you are just a small part of something big, but without you, there's nothing.
As you talk through your military experience, I hear this overarching theme of adaptability, how nothing stays constant but change. How has that mindset shaped how you approach farming?
Climate change has shifted a lot of things for a lot of people. So doing things the old way doesn't exist anymore. Whether it's AI or technology, you have to be able to be a lot of things. If your tractor breaks, sometimes you got to be able to fix it. If seasons change in the middle of a season, literally, you have to be able to pivot. So being rigid and still and hardcore is not what farming is now. A couple of months ago, we had summer, winter, and fall in the same week, and a couple of times in the same days. Farmers have to be a little bit of everything. We're scientists, we're mechanics, we are mothers, we're fathers, we are meteorologists, because a lot of us can look at the sky at night and tell what the temperature is going to be tomorrow. We can look at the stars around the moon and predict when it's going to rain. I've learned to tune into the things that I was born with. I used to tell my culinary students that knowledge is passed down through the genes. And when you believe that, it will show itself to you.
Absolutely. Shifting to another major focus of your work, you've always been outspoken about the mental health crisis in farming, and the numbers are alarming. Farmer suicide rates are actually higher than veteran suicide rates, yet we almost never hear anything about it. Why do you think this conversation has been so invisible?
America does not want to believe that something's wrong in the farming community. It is supposed to be perfect weather, it's supposed to be a perfect harvest, and we are supposed to be tougher than nails. But at the end of the day, some things can no longer be hidden, nor should they. When I mention numbers to people in different settings, I get the shock. What do you mean farmers' suicide rate is higher than veterans? No one does more brutal things than veterans. We go to war. We're trained killing machines. We're taught that if it's hanging off, you duct tape it back on and you keep fighting. And farmers are no different. I had a friend tell me a joke about if you want to clear a room full of farmers, mention the word mental health. The military is the same. Talking about mental health issues sometimes to us is a weakness, but in all actuality, it's not. It is the brilliance of knowing your limitations, of knowing who you are, and being okay with that. But that comes from building spaces where it's okay to be who you are, no matter what that state is. Sadness, frustration, anxiety. Having a safe space will allow people to talk about it more. And I also believe that it's the shifting of our language. If you say mental wellness, people react completely different than if you say mental health. So I think that we have to shift how we talk about it, shift our language, and build safe spaces.
Continuing the conversation around being invisible, there's also a structural issue to what you've named. You buy retail, you sell wholesale. That financial squeeze is relentless, especially for small farmers. Add that to the USDA's tendency to not even track these smaller operations. What does that invisibility cause farmers, beyond just the money?
Stress, fear, desperation, all piled up on one. And you no longer have control over what you do, what you produce, and people's perceived value of all of those things. There are very few farmers in Congress. There are very few farmers in the political arena. Georgia has quite a bit, but they're still the minority when they go to the spaces that develop the laws and procedures that will take care of us. It's hard believing you're invisible. It's hard breaking barriers to be seen, but it has to be done. We have to make sure that we start telling who we are, saying it in spaces that can make a difference. You mentioned earlier about being invisible. All of my careers have been careers where I've either been one in this space or definitely less than 5 in the space. If I wasn't the only Black, I was the only Black woman. Based on how the system has been developed, it tends to ignore the minorities in those spaces. When that is the case, one or two things happen. You either become okay with being invisible, or you learn to fight your way through and make sure that the next person that comes that looks like you is not the only one in that space.
Thank you for your transparency and your vulnerability in this conversation. You mentioned being one of the only Black women in the room. And in previous conversations, we've also talked about going to the Georgia Farm Bureau event and finding only 6 Black women there, with only 2 of them actually owning their farms. You're operating in an industry where even the clothes and equipment weren't designed for a body like yours. What does it actually feel like to do 85% of the work and still be treated like you're peripheral to the industry?
There's a saying that good girls don't make history. And in order to shift paradigms, you have to, one, be in the space, and two, be able to say out loud, this doesn't fit for me. I'm not traditional. I had the honor of being interviewed talking about chef jackets and how they are too long in the sleeves. They're too big for women. Where they're big at, it doesn't fit women. It was no different from the military uniform. We kept making enough noise until they shifted and brought in uniforms that were designed for us. And the farming industry is going to have to be the same. We're going to have to keep showing up. We're going to have a safe space that after we leave the places where we're the only, that we go into a place where we're with family. And again, that's stress management on a whole nother level. It's an invisible stress being tough, but it's still a stress.
Mental wellness, you said, isn't just about survival. It's about finding your why, finding joy. For farmers who are exhausted and are barely keeping their heads above water, what does the path forward actually look like? Where do you even start?
In the stillness of the night is where it begins. Most people think the morning is the beginning, but it is actually what you say to yourself before you close your eyes the night before. One of the exercises that I like to do with farmers is I ask them before they go to bed, close their eyes and go over the things that they're grateful for. And if you are grateful for the small things, when you close your eyes, when you open them in the morning, you repeat that. It changes what your next day looks like. It's a paradigm shift. If we cannot teach farmers how to pivot and shift their paradigm, it's going to get even more difficult because the average age of a farmer is 65. And at 65, we're so set in our ways. We want dinner at a certain time every time. We want to walk a certain way. And that's not the way it is now. So it is truly shifting the paradigm and retraining us to look for the good. I do another exercise where I have them go back to the first day they stepped on the land, when they owned it, when it was their responsibility. And think about what that felt like, the joy, the elation of it now being yours. Most of us forget that when the world shows up. You got bills, you got crops, you got harvest, you got equipment. And a lot of people forget what that joy was like. So we just have to keep reminding ourselves over and over again, because life is lifing. And that's the one joy that's easily forgotten.
Allow me to zoom out for a second, and let's look at agriculture as a whole. You've once described as an identity crisis. What would it look like for that identity to shift? And not just for Black women, but for the whole industry. What does a healthier agricultural ecosystem actually look like to you?
Inclusion. Farming no longer looks like farming of old. Florida used to be the orange capital. They did all the citrus. It's shifting now. Georgia is starting to produce a lot of citrus. That wasn't the way it was in the past. Identity crises come when people refuse to grow with the times. We've got AI. I saw an article today that said, is farming going to change with AI? And we have to. It used to be that farming meant that on a notebook somewhere, you wrote down when you planted, when it was time to harvest, who you purchased your seeds from, what the cost was. Everything is automated now. There are tractors that are built that farmers can no longer work on them themselves. If they do, it voids the warranty, which means that there's another expense. So learning to be flexible is just about the best word that you can use for it. Our identity is no longer just rooted in the soil. It is our neighbors. It is learning what a co-op is, learning to build your farm based on what somebody else is farming, how we can partner together so that everybody can eat. Because before, it was, I could raise everything myself and do what we need to do and be okay. But the old African proverbs say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go further, find someone to go with you. And that is what it's going to have to be. Because there are not a lot of small farmers anymore. And when I say small, I'm literally talking about less than 500 acres. Big Ag is here. They bought up the family land because the family can no longer sustain it. And when we talk about identity crisis, the children are not coming back to farm. They're not staying on the farm. They're leaving as soon as they can. And that's good. We raised them to be independent, but we're going to have to start looking at other ways to protect family land. It may be the neighbor's son that's always coming to help. That may be your succession plan, but we've got to be open. We've got to learn to be flexible, and we've got to learn to look at the big picture and not silo our lives.
So we've absolutely got our work cut out for us. But what I'm hearing is that as long as we can find a way to do that as a collective, and this agriculture ecosystem that you dream up, I think is possible. And I'm excited to one day see what it's like to be in it. As we wrap up our interview today, I would love to know, what's one thing that's bringing you joy right now?
Knowing that every time I mention the word mental wellness in spaces that is not normally mentioned at, this is going to tell you how country I am. Growing up, it was skipping rocks. And when we say skipping rocks, that's throwing the rock across the top of the water and seeing how long it will bounce. Most people don't think about the whole system under the water is shifted just from one rock. The sand is moved, the vegetation is moved, the fishes are moved, and nothing is no longer the same. And it still turns out good. When I start being in spaces and start helping change the dialogue and how people look at mental wellness in the agricultural community, there'll be less suicides. There'll be less families that can't manage the stress. Because part of my mission is to share the tools that will help change those dynamics. And to know that, it gives me joy.
Beautifully said. Dr. Connie, this has been such a gift. Your clarity, your commitment, and the fact that you show up as your whole self in everything you do. That's exactly the kind of leadership that BRAIDEd is built around. Thank you.
Let them tell my story. Let them talk about my life. Filled with love, with joy, always giving more than I got. My service tells how I live. Unselfish love, unconditional giving, standing strong, living large. Here I
Join me in welcoming Miss Valerie, founder of the EcoWomanist Institute Southeast, to share her reflection as we close out the conversation on mental well-being, particularly in the agriculture community.
At EWISE, self-recovery is not a private wellness trend. It is a courageous, communal practice of telling the truth about what has happened to us, what has been carried through us, and what we refuse to pass on. Bell Hooks teaches that if our goal is to be well in one's soul, we must honestly confront loneliness, those conditions and messages that deny our dignity, our safety, and our right to rest. For Black women connected to land, sharecroppers, first-generation landowners, and today's farmers, this truth-telling is not abstract. It lives in the body, an exhaustion that wouldn't lift, and the vigilance that won't turn off, and the grief that has been given a witness. That has never been given a witness, actually. The trauma line from sharecropping to first land ownership. Black women sharecroppers labored under systems designed to extract and control debt peonage, racial terror, sexual violence, and the constant threat of displacement. Many were tasked with holding families together while navigating hunger, uncertainty, and the daily humiliation of being treated as less than human. And still, some became the first in their families to own land, often through extraordinary sacrifice, mutual aid, and spiritual grit. But ownership did not erase trauma. It sometimes intensified pressure to prove worthlessness, to protect that was finally gained, to never be caught slipping. The land could be both sanctuary and a stressor, because the same world that forced sharecropping also built pathways to land loss through discriminatory lending, heirs' property vulnerability, predatory contracts, and unequal access to markets and support. What Hooks makes clear, healing is not isolation. Bell Hooks reminds us, rarely if ever are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. That is the blueprint of how we approach Black women's mental health in farming communities. Too often, Black women farmers are expected to be endlessly strong, carrying the farm, the family, the finances, the caregiving, and the community leadership while being under-resourced and under-recognized. When Hooks says true resistance begins with people confronting pain and wanting to do something to change it, she is naming self-recovery as a liberation strategy. For Black women farmers, confronting pain is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is how we interrupt cycles of harm and build futures where the next generation doesn't have to confuse survival with wholeness. If you're a Black woman farmer, past, present, or future, know this: choosing self-recovery is choosing life. Hooks teaches that the moment we choose to love, we move against domination and towards freedom. At EWISE, we believe that freedom includes land, yes, and it also includes a mind that can breathe, a body that can rest, and a spirit that can return to itself. This is your invitation. Come out of isolation and into communion. Bring your story, your fatigue, your brilliance, and your questions. We will braid healing with strategy, tenderness with truth, and love with action, until wholeness is not rare, but rooted.
Healthy farmers build healthy farms, and healthy farms build sustainable communities. I want that to land. Let it sit. What Dr. Connie is doing, naming the stress, naming the invisibility, and refusing to let either one be the last word, that is the foundation of what BRAIDEd is about. We're building something that starts with people. Land comes next, but it always starts with people. As we embark on this 18-month journey, we strive to not only see the women around us, but help them see themselves. Value the importance of taking care of self, and realize we're much more than what we create for others. We have to create for ourselves first. And we encourage all of our listeners to do the same. If this conversation resonated with you, share it. Not just with farmers, share it with anyone who eats food, which is all of us. In the meantime, keep up with everything EYs on our social media and don't hesitate to say hey. In our next episode, we'll continue weaving the story of what it means to steward land, community, and each other. Until then, this has been BRAIDEd, weaving connections, cultivating justice, harvesting change.